Hey guys, welcome back to the Hit Up podcast. Today we have another special guest on the podcast, the Rugby League Guru. How are you doing, Guru?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. All going well. Bit depressed now the footy season's over. Don't know what to do with myself just quietly.
Yeah. Funny story, listeners. Nathan, or the Rugby League Guru, is it's the first person apart from me, Connor, and Liam to know about the Hit Up podcast. I actually had a chat with him on his podcast maybe, what was it, like a month or two ago now? And ever since then, we've been rocketing. Hey Liam and Connor.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Boys, I'll be honest with you. I only just put that together now that I'm looking at you again. That's awesome. This is fucking mad. So how good's that?
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. Your tips definitely helped us to start off with. We've changed a lot since then, and it's only been like a month, which is pretty cool. But yeah,
it's awesome. I was in with Isaac the other day, and he mentioned that he was on your podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was like
Isaac's such a cool guy.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, we just started this up just through a bit of a laugh, just three mates, and just wanted to talk about footy because we love the game, and we just decided to keep it going.
That's how it should be. How good.
Sweet as.
Yeah, so at the start of every podcast, I like to do a little segment called the set of six. So I'm going to ask you 6 quick fire questions, and then you just answer with what comes off the top of your head.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Favorite fast food?
Probably Macca's for me. Macca's or KFC. They're both at the end of the street, so it's dangerous territory, I'll tell you that much.
Favorite NRL team?
Don't have one, mate. Yeah, a lot of people don't believe me, but genuinely don't have one. I live in South Sydney. My missus is a massive Rabbitohs fan, so I sort of get lumped into that group, but I don't really go for them. I'm sort of more of I go for players that I like. There's a lot of boys down at the Melbourne Storm that I like at the moment. Those Penrith boys obviously impressed me the last few weeks as well. So, mate, I go for whoever's my captain in Supercoach, to be honest with you.
Fair. Biggest improving team next year?
Jesus. Biggest improving team. Oh, it's tough. There's a lot of teams at the bottom that I think are going to get a lot better. I think Canterbury will be one that'll be up there. Brisbane, I think if Katoni Staggs probably plays over 15 games, I'm going to say probably Brisbane. Adding Adam Reynolds, Kate Will, hopefully getting Staggs, getting Branko Lee, Jordan Piera too, so some good depth. I'd probably go for Brisbane, mate.
Yeah, fair. Who's your favourite music artist at the moment?
Mate, this, as weird as it sounds, honest to God, I do not listen to music. People don't believe me. Ever since I discovered podcasts 4 or 5 years ago, mate, I honestly couldn't tell you the last time I picked a song. We got a new car the other day, and my missus plugged my phone into the Apple Play, and she goes, "There's no music on this." And I went, "Yeah, I don't." And she went, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" No one believes it. It's a bit like the non-fan thing. I honestly don't really listen to that much music. If I had to listen to anything, probably the Chili's maybe, but yeah, I'm more of a podcast listener all the time.
That's sick. All right. Who is your very early 2022 Premier prediction?
After watching the Penrith Panthers, it's hard to go past them, what they did, but I think that Roosters side's going to be very impressive. Melbourne's going to be very interesting. I don't know whether Cam Munster being sober for a year brings him into $1.10 or shoots him out to about 30 to 1. I'm not sure which way that's going to go, but I think it has to be at the moment either Roosters, Penrith, or Melbourne probably. But mate, based on what Penrith did the last few weeks, it's hard to argue with them, I think.
Yeah, and the final question, are you a fan of the 6 again, or would you rather it go back to penalties?
I'm a fan of the 6 again in ways. I think that we need to work out how to stop the 6 again on zero tackle. Penrith essentially won that grand final off, whenever they were on the back foot, they would just give away a 6 again, then they would bash you in those next 3 tackles, win the ruck again. But in saying that, mate, as it has been in rugby league forever, the smartest coaches, they work out how to take advantage of whatever rules are put in place. I've heard a lot of people with this argument say we need to fix it. That's fine. You'll fix it. And then Bellamy, Cleary, Robinson, they're the smartest guys in the room. They'll work out the next way to take advantage of it. So it's always evolving. I've always said once Bellamy's done at Melbourne, if I was the NRL, I'd be giving him a blank check and bringing him into their room just to help them because they've got no idea how to get above these coaches.
Yeah. So we've posted up on our Instagram a few questions for our followers to ask. So you've just got a couple here from you. The first one's from KCP682. Will you be watching the Queensland and Trust final?
For sure, I will be. I actually had Rowan Smith on the podcast. He's the North Devils coach. He's the son of Brian Smith, obviously. I spoke to him 18 months ago, and when he told me what he was doing up there, it sounded so impressive, and I've sort of kept track of it a little bit. Obviously, like Danny Levi's landed in that team. Tyrone Roberts has landed in that team since, but he's also the guy that he did the whole preseason with Reece Walsh this year, and he sort of said to Brisbane he's ready, and they sort of went with their own judgment. So a little tick to Rowan there. I really do hope that Norths win it this weekend. I will be watching it. Rowan got Coach of the Year up there, and I think he should be on the first grade radar pretty soon.
Definitely. So the second one we got is from Nathan Saka. One, who's your favorite player?
Favorite player. I've always been a big Harry Grant fan. He's a guy that I did watch come through the Queensland Cup, and I was always a big fan of him. I love all these lock forwards that are running around at the moment. Cam Murray, I think he's sensational. Radley would have to be right up there as far as my favorite players go. Turbo this year was sensational to watch. Munster, I loved watching him do his thing. My fans know I've always got a real soft spot for Matty Moylan. If he can just keep his body fit, could be anything, but proving quite a challenge. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go Victor Radley, though, to be honest with you. Guys, I love that he's an old school footballer, tough, skillful, sort of just a complete guy for me.
Yeah,
Definitely.
those old school players are probably my favorites as well. I love the Simon Mannerings of the world, those sort of guys. But so we're going to go to you. We're going to do like a personal look maybe on your journey and just different questions about your journey and how you came to be where you are right now. So first question is, why did you start your Instagram page?
I started my Instagram page three years ago. Jesus. Essentially, I was doing a NFL fantasy comp with some of my mates, just because we were bored in the off season. I followed my NFL. I followed my Pittsburgh Steelers, but outside of the quarterback and our best wide receivers, I couldn't have told you any more Steelers outside of that. And then once we started the NFL fantasy, being as hyper competitive as I am, I wanted to win that. So I had to find a way to try and win it. So I ended up going on Twitter. I had to download Twitter to find this dude that he gave out fantasy tips. And I essentially handed my team over to him. And I think he was called like Fantasy Guru or NFL Guru or something like that. And I sort of sat there and went, fuck, like no one's doing this for Supercoach. So I started doing it, and then originally I got about 2 days into it, and I was like, what I should do is try and trick some of my mates to ask questions of this page, try and lure them in. Then on draft day, we all go away for the weekend and draft our Supercoach sides. I was going to spring it on them and say, fucking this guy asked this. And I was sort of asking them questions about how successful they'd been and everything. And I was trying to lure them into, telling a few porkies to me because they didn't know it was me, and then spring them in front of the boys. But, mate, the night before I was meant to announce that I got fucking shit canned, and I started answering questions on it, and I took a photo of where we were sitting, and the bloke was sitting in a circle playing Kings or whatever, and the bloke opposite me, he looked up and just went, "It's fucking you," and I was like, "Oh, shit." So that's sort of how it started, and then, I don't know, I've got a mate who's got his own social media business who's done very well for himself, and he just sort of said, "I think you should keep doing it, see where it goes," and yeah, it's probably been the best decision of my life. I haven't made many good ones, but this is definitely one of them, no doubt about it.
Yeah, so you just brought Coach. What do you enjoy about Supercoach, and what can they do to improve Supercoach?
I think I love Supercoach because it just, I can be watching the West Tigers and the Bulldogs at 2 p.m. on a Saturday, and normally it's a shitstorm, but I've got something to entertain me and watch that game for. It also just brings constant banter with your mates. We've got about 14 of us now in our Supercoach comp, so you're versing one of your other mates every week. We get hyper competitive about it. It's fucking ridiculous how competitive we are and how competitive I am in particular. It's embarrassing. But it just adds that extra element to every single game. And, it's the same with betting in games. It's unreal to watch that sort of stuff. This is free. You can get real competitive with your mates. I love that side of it. Supercoach wise, as I said, we played an NFL fantasy, and when you look at how good that over there is, that product there, I mean, it's unbelievable. And obviously there's 10 million more people that are playing it, so much more money and advertising goes into it. But do you boys play Supercoach?
Yeah, we had a league between us three.
Yeah, going. So it's like you play Supercoach, and like the game finishes on Saturday night, and then you got to wait until Monday until you know what their actual scores were. Like over in the NFL, when the full time whistle goes, it's done. they're the schools, you know what it's going to be. With Supercoach, it becomes a bit of a lottery. And obviously that's a huge first world problem. But if they could change that, it'd be sensational. If they could also find a way to stop Tom Trbojevic being the best player by a country mile, that'd also be helpful.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, who was like a player that you got for really cheap, really shot up in price? And who do you reckon that those players will be next year?
For me, I'm more of a draft player. So as I say, like with my mates, we go away for a weekend. And for example, James Tedesco, he can only be owned by one person now comp, as a draft works. Classic, I'm not as good at or don't enjoy it as much. I think it's more of a maths class than Supercoach, One guy that I had all year that people bagged a lot was Luciano Leilua. And I still don't think he's reached his peak yet as far as Supercoach goes. If you guys have been playing for a while, like that year that Bryce Cartwright just set the world alight, offloading, scoring tries, setting up tries, I think Leilua's got that sort of ability, but with a bigger body, he could be even more damaging if he wants. So he's one to keep an eye on over the next few years. There's a few, obviously you got Nick Meaney. He's heading down to the Melbourne Storm next year. If he's a guy that maybe lands on a wing, there could be huge upside in him as well. I haven't really had a deep dive into a heap of the guys heading into next year, to be perfectly honest with you yet, because I've been so busy with the grand final. But during the off season, it'll be something I'll be diving very deep into.
Definitely. So we know you love rugby league. Did you grow up playing rugby league, or did you play any other sports?
Yeah, grew up playing rugby league, not very well, impressively bad, to be honest with you. But always just loved probably being around the game more than actually playing it. I've still got a footy team that I coach, an under 16 side here in South Sydney. Absolutely love doing that. I always found that I knew what to do. I just didn't have the fucking ability to be able to do it, which was frustrating as all hell, as I'm sure 99% of dudes that play rugby league played union a bit when I was growing up as well. Yeah, a bit of cricket here and there, but rugby league was always my main gig, without a doubt.
Definitely.
Yep. So going back to the Guru brand and whatever, how did you grow and gain exposure so quickly?
It's interesting when people say that. To like, I think for the outside looking in, it looks like it was quick, but mate, for me, it took forever, and it took so much work. It was not even funny. I get pages messaging me all the time going, hey, can you give me a shout out, man? I've been grinding for 5 weeks, and I look at their page and they've got 20 posts, and I'm like, fuck, you don't even know. Like, you don't even know, brother. Like, the amount of work that, and it's same with Roasty, same as, Den Kemp and these guys. Like, every single page starts at 0 and you've got to work your way up. And it's not all about followers. It's about the content and the effort and all that you put into it. But yeah, like mine started really quickly, to be fair. I think I got to 1,000 in about 3 or 4 weeks. So that was, I remember at the time thinking 1,000 was like 1 million, like I remember thinking I'm a big time here, Then about halfway through the season, it got to 10,000. Then it sort of mellowed out for a long time. Obviously I was doing Supercoach then. So by the time you get to around 18, there's so many guys that have just lost interest in Supercoach. They've just got no interest in it whatsoever. And then by round 24, there's even less guys that are interested in it. So it sort of mellowed out. Then I changed it to Rugby League Guru because I just wanted to talk, a little bit deeper outside of Supercoach. And I found that, every time I posted something about just general rugby league, the number one comment would be, stick to Supercoach, you dickhead or whatever. And I was like, yeah, okay, fair. That's fair cop. Like, if I'm going to be a Supercoach page, probably should. So, sort of made the decision to change to Rugby League Guru, and it's just allowed me to talk about whatever the fuck I want, essentially. I still do a heap of Supercoach, obviously, but it's just, it's been a day. I hate saying the word like grind and shit, but it has been just a day-to-day sort of working project that, I've gone through stages where I'll post 10 times a day. I've gone through stages where I can't even look at my phone for 2 days because I'm just like, fuck, get away from me sort of thing. I remember at the end of last year, I was exhausted. Once the grand final was over, I was honestly like, thank God I get to have a break. I'm not feeling that way this year. Obviously had a few achievements for myself that have been really good that have probably pushed me forward a little bit, but it definitely is tiring. But it's also, I'm talking footy, so I'm very blessed to be in the position I am.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that you made like 10 to 20 posts a day. Like, how do you have the time for that, and what keeps you motivated to keep grinding like that?
Yeah, I probably didn't have the time for it. Realistically, let's be perfectly honest here. You just make it work. I'm a teacher, so at the time I was teaching full time. So I was doing, Monday to Friday, like everyone else, 9 to 5 or whatever. But I would, I'd have an hour for lunchtime every day, and when all the teachers would go down to the cafe, I'd go sit in my car and I'd be making content, and it was sort of like people sort of like, what the fuck is he doing, sort of thing. But I was like, eventually, I knew that eventually it'd sort of be my ticket out of there, and it slowly is starting to become a reality. But I would, I'd get to work 20 minutes earlier, and I'd sit in my car and make my content for the day, or to get me through until lunchtime to do it again, come home, coach my footy team, whatever, come home at 8, chill out with my missus, have dinner, and then do another, 2 hours throughout the night making whatever, whether it's actually sitting down and whether it's lying in bed making content as she's falling asleep or whatever it might be. But just made time for it because I was passionate about it. And like, when you get on your iPhone and you use that little update of your screen time.
Yeah.
Right. I used to see that notification pop up and just throw my phone away. Just go, no, I don't want to fucking see this shit. No way. Because honestly, there was times, like, especially when it was like peak finals time a few years ago, and I was trying to make a heap of ground. Like, I could honestly push like 14 hours, which is just crazy. And when you consider as well, on top of that, I'm teaching full time. So I'm spending 8 hours at school. Like, I'd be on my phone a lot during that time, but obviously being a teacher, there's a lot of time you can't be on your phone. So for me to be getting 14 hours a day, there's only 24 of them each day, is fucking crazy,
Yeah.
Definitely. So, sorry. So what was the best part creating content, and what is the worst part of doing the job?
Probably the worst part, which I think people don't understand from the other side. And I get that. And you boys will start to understand this as well. Like, you might put a heap of work into a post, like a heap of work. Like, there's some posts that I put, 2 or 3 hours worth of scrolling through history and finding stats and getting the calculator out and working all that shit, and think, fuck, this content is unreal because I'm a rugby league nerd and I love that shit. I put it out there and no one fucking cares. No one cares at all. I always tell a funny story. I had, I put all these effort into all these posts. Sometimes they hit, sometimes they don't. And I remember last year, you remember when Nathan Brown made his Origin debut? His first hit up, he bumped someone over. There was a photo that I found of Nathan Brown taking his first hit up with a Queenslander falling over in front of him. And I took that picture of Nathan Brown. I wrote next to it, "This guy's made for Origin," and I posted. I did it whilst I was sitting at traffic lights. It took me like 45 seconds. And still to this day, I don't know why, but it's my best received post ever. It went for like 500,000 views or something crazy like that. And I was just like, I put no effort into it. It was honestly like brain dead content that had 6 words next to it, no creative side to it whatsoever. And I just sat there going, fuck, the amount of times I spend 3 hours on a post, and that one, I honestly did it between a red and a green light, and it blew up. It's so those moments are absolutely demoralizing. They're probably the hardest bit about it. And when you get negativity and stuff like that used to rattle me heaps. Like, I used to have fights with cunts over the internet and everything about the most stupid shit in the world. And I'd look back 24 hours and I'd read the conversation again and just go, you numpty, like, what are you doing? You don't even know this guy that you're arguing with, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Positives, like a heap. Like, obviously going on like YKTR and Bloke in a Bar has been awesome. Met a heap of unreal people, not even like just players or whatever, but like meeting Dean from NRL Roast, champion fella, like guys that I'll probably always be mates with. Meeting a guy like Finchy, like an unreal fella, a guy that I looked up to when I was growing up, or like loved as a footballer, who I thought was the funniest guy in the world, and then getting to sit next to him for 3 hours confirmed he is the funniest guy in the world, sort of thing. So those little moments are unreal. A heap of positives come out of this sort of stuff though, guys, a heap of them.
Yeah, definitely. Just following up on that, a lot of the negativity, how do you deal with that? Because it must be quite hard on you, especially putting all that time into it. So do you just not really care, or do you have a little process you go through?
I'd love to play tough guy and say I don't care, but like, you obviously do. You obviously do when you put a heap of effort into something and someone just shit cans it. And, like, I could tell you, like, if I was to put a post up now and I was to get 10 comments of really bad negativity, I could tell you guys who the usernames would be, because you get used to the same people. And you got to sort of take on that approach of, like, fuck, you got to feel sorry for these people sometimes. Like, if that's their kicks for the day to get stuck into you when they're following you to then, to lay shit on you because you posted something that they disagree with. I've been accused of going for every single club, hating every single club. Like it just, whenever you say something positive or negative about their team, they think you're public enemy number one. But yeah, I mean, as I said, in the early days when I got negativity, it used to rattle me heaps, and I used to try and, win this fucking social media battle of who would have the last say or whatever. But now it's just sort of like, I've sort of heard them all. I've been called much worse things by prettier girls anyway, let's be honest here. So, as you get older and as you do more and more of it, I think you tend to care less. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird thing though, because it's like, there's no real handbook for how to deal with it, because it's only been a thing that's come about in the last 5 or 6 years. Like everyone's still working out on the fly. Like I imagine that content creators like us in 20 years time, like there'll be a handbook of how to deal with this shit, and it'll be a completely different landscape. But at the moment, it's very different. I try and just reply with positivity as much as I can. Sometimes I'm having a bad day, or I've had a few schooners and I reply like a fucking idiot, but most of the time I just try and be positive,
Yeah. 100%. So you mentioned before hard work was one of the big keys in like doing content creation or doing a podcast. What would be, other than hard work, what would be the tip you have for aspiring podcasters or content creators?
It sounds silly, but like there's an old saying, like if you're not the champion, pretend you're the champion. And it's an old boxing thing, and it's the sort of thing like I have people message me all the time, be like, I want to start a page, I want to start a podcast. And I always say to them, yeah, cool, mate, here's my number. Call me if you want to have a chat about it, whatever. They always say like, oh, I'm not sure if people want to listen to what I'm saying. And I'm like, fuck, like you got to change that mindset. You got to just, even if they don't, you got to pretend like they do. And it changes everything straight away. If you sort of build that self-importance up, because the reality of it is that's why reality TV is so crash hot, because people are nosy. People want to know what other people think. They want to know what they're saying. Like you put content out there and people will listen to it. They might hate you. It might be the Anthony Mundine effect. They might just want to listen to you so they can bag you, but that's fine. They're still listening, And like you boys, the same, you guys have only just started, but you'd be surprised how many people would stumble on whatever you're saying. And the way that you guys talk is just like you're sitting at a pub, and people will keep listening to that because people want to be nosy. They want to know what guys are talking about. Could you imagine like if you were to go to the pub on a Saturday night, once we're back to normality and there was 25 tables of blokes sitting there, how good would it be if you could just go from table to table and just join in on random conversations? Like those are your best drunken nights when you're out and you just show up to a random table and you fucking shoot shit, whatever they're talking about. That's what podcasting is essentially. You can just go and sit at random tables and have conversations with whoever you want, except podcasting, those tables are quite often, they're filled with famous people or ex-footballers or people with pages or whatever it might be. Like it's an unreal opportunity for people to have, like before, to be able to get an idea into what someone was thinking, you used to have to read a 400-page book. Like I couldn't think of anything worse personally. Now you can plug it in your ears. You can listen to it while you're at work. You can do it while you're running, at the gym, whatever the hell it might be. You can listen whenever.
Yeah, absolutely. You put a lot of hard work into your page. If the opportunity came up to do something within the NRL, like maybe a job at Fox League or, one of those opportunities, would you take that with both hands or would you stick to teaching?
To be honest with you, I wouldn't, but I also wouldn't stick to teaching. I don't think a page like mine needs Fox League anymore or Channel 9. I think we can make it on our own now. I think that glass ceiling has been smashed. I mean, when you guys, when something breaks in rugby league, are you going to Channel 9 and Fox League just to see what fucking staff writers has to say about it?
Nah.
No way. You're going to Denon, you're going to Isaac John, you're going to me, you're going to Roasty, you're going to someone to see what it is. I think that the entire climate has changed as far as that sort of stuff goes. And like, honestly, if I get an email you saying Fox League said, do you want to join us? I would say no instantly, because I know that means that I have to fit into the structure of what they have to do. Yes, I'd probably get more money out of it, but it changes everything I have to do. And I'm pretty confident that within 2 or 3 years, I'll be able to make that wage anyway, living in my own house, doing my own hours, talking about whatever the hell I want to talk about without, a muzzle on me that's preventing me from saying what I want to say.
Is that the end goal for you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, without a doubt. It was probably something that for a long time I was like embarrassed to say, because it just seems so fucking ridiculous that your job could be talking in my spare bedroom in my house that I've turned into a studio about footy. Like it's just heaps backwards. But no, I genuinely, I've gone down to like 2 days teaching at the moment, and the rest I'm just living off revenue from the podcast, and that's 18 months old. So definitely, mate. If we were to have this chat in 2 years' time and I was still teaching, I've got to tell you, I'd be incredibly disappointed.
Definitely. Now, we've got a lot of new signings for the teams next year. Who's your favourite signing for next year?
I think the Matty Burton signing is really exciting. I just wish he had a halfback that he could play with. That's my only worry about Matty Burton. But I was thinking about it earlier today. The guys at Canterbury have got, like, they've managed to get, Matt Duffy, who's been brushed by his team. So he's going to be hungry. They've got Tavita Pangai, who, went from being the king of brain explosions to walking into the Penrith side and being a genuine part of that football team. They've got Matt Burton, who was a reserve grader when they signed him. He's now a premiership winner and probably a top 3 to get a Clive Churchill medal the other night. Like, the way that it's panned out for them has been unbelievable. As I said before, Brisbane, I really like the look of them. I think Adam Reynolds is going to be a great signing. I think Kate Well's really underrated as well. He's just consistent as all hell. I know when people think about their best back rowers in the game, like, they wouldn't put him up there because he doesn't have that, 3 tries a game like a Kickow or a Fafita or one of those guys. But Kate Well's just so consistent. He'll make such a difference to that Brisbane side. He'll be unreal. Not a signing, but probably the guy I'm most excited to see next year is probably Luke Keary returning, though. I think people forget just how good Keary is and how much impact he can have for that Roosters side. For them to finish 5th or 6th or wherever the hell they were without a top 3 halfback in rugby league, that's crazy. Imagine Penrith without Cleary. Imagine South Sydney without Adam Reynolds. The potential on the Roosters next year is insane.
Yeah, 100%. So going back to the podcast, they obviously take a lot of preparation, like we know it firsthand. How long do you spend like preparing a big interview or a podcast beforehand?
To be honest with you, the vast majority of my podcasts, I just start talking. I don't have a notepad or anything in front of me. I just talk about whatever's going on. That's sort of been my little point of difference. But when I'm doing an interview, I'm trying to think who the last interview I had. It's been a while. Last interview I had was Rod Wishart, who played for the Steelers, champion bloke. I probably did 3 to 4 hours on him. I found any other podcast that I could possibly find where he'd spoken on. There hasn't been many, but went through and watched old tapes of him, just searched through the internet to find as much stuff as I possibly could. There's been a couple of times where, like, I've gone to speak to someone and, me being a little bit arrogant, thinking, I already know all the stuff I need to know for this dude. And then we start talking and he says things that I've got no idea what he's talking about. I'm like, fuck, like, I should have researched this. I should have found this out, sort of thing. That sort of how I had Mark Geyer on about 18 months ago and I thought, I know MG's career inside out. This will be fine. But then he started talking about stuff and I wanted to go more in depth on it, but I couldn't because I didn't have that knowledge. So definitely, if you're going to have someone on your podcast, you're going to interview them. The week leading up to that, you need to listen to every single podcast that has featured that person. You need to find out everything they've already told people and where you can go a little bit deeper, where you can get the best stories, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, you've had the opportunity to talk to many great names. Who would you say have been a couple of your favorites, and who would be your top 3 people that you could get on if you had the chance all time?
Some of my favorites, I always enjoy talking to Finchy. He's got he's hilarious, but he's got such a great footy brain as well. I think he's criminally underrated when it comes to that sort of stuff. And I think Denon's done so well to lock him down. As much as it's all jokes and giggles with Finchy, I think he's one of the best footy brains around, without a doubt. Other guys I've spoken to, Anthony Minicello was great. He was a really good yarn. So was Craig Fitzgibbon. MG that I mentioned, he was great as well. But a couple of guys that, like, you probably wouldn't expect, guys you probably haven't heard from, like a guy like Michael Witt, like, he bounced around a heap of clubs. And it's quite often those guys they're not in the media anymore because they weren't superstars, but they were treated like shit by 4 and 5 clubs. So they got to experience what it was really like. Like, you boys spoke to Isaac John, like, he had to leave a couple of clubs because they essentially said, fuck, we don't want you here, like, go away, sort of thing. So it's those sort of experiences I loved to hear. Michael Barney was another guy I had on. I'm not sure if you guys remember Michael Barney. He was a winger back in 2008 for the Manly Seagulls. He came from an island in the Torres Strait that had like 30 people on his island. He had to get a canoe to mainland Australia to get a plane down to Manly. Like, some of those unreal stories. Guy, if I could interview anyone ever, I think Cameron Smith would have to be right up there. I'd love to talk to Smithy. Cooper Cronk, I think he'd be sensational as well. And then probably Freddie or Matt Johns, one of those two guys. Matty Johns obviously does so much podcasting and everything that there's probably not too many more stories you can get out of him. But I think Freddie, mate, I think he would just be a basket case of information. He'd be unreal.
Do you have any other interests outside rugby league and sports? Do you watch any other sports, support any other teams?
I support the Steelers in the NFL, but mate, outside of that, I've got to be honest with you, not really. I'll watch the AFL Grand Final when it's on, but if you asked me a week out from the AFL Grand Final who was in it, I couldn't have told you. I wouldn't have had a clue. Cricket, I used to love. I've sort of gone off cricket a little bit, just fallen out of love with it. So probably NFL will be the main one, but I might watch one game a week at absolute maximum. So mainly is NRL. I think once you get so deep into something like this, you enjoy having a bit of a break from sport to some extent. If the All Blacks are on, I'll watch them. I won't watch the Wallabies. I can't put myself through it. But if the All Blacks are on, I'll watch them. But outside of the Barrett boys, I probably couldn't name too many of them realistically. So NRL is definitely made at the top of the pile, no doubt about it.
Yep. That's all we really have time for today. We just like to thank you for coming on the podcast. What is it, like 6th or 7th person we've had on the podcast now, and we enjoyed interviewing you, had some interesting stories, and yeah, anything you got to say, guys?
Just thanks for coming, man. It's been a real pleasure. Great talking to you.
All good, boys. Thanks for having me. If there's anything I can help with in the future or anything, by all means, send me a message, yeah?
Yeah, awesome.
Sounds good.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right. See you, boys.
Bye.
Yeah.